Usually, politicians leave it to professional historians to write their legacy and cast judgment on their predecessors. Well, it seems no one told U.S. President Donald Trump that. He's busy creating his own legacy and shaping past presidential history less than a year into his second term. Trump opened a gallery of presidential portraits at the White House in September. Now he's added a plaque below every photo in the so-called Walk of Fame. The White House says many were written by the president himself. Barack Obama is, for example, described as being divisive, and Ronald Reagan as a fan of a young Trump. If you can't find the photo of former President Joe Biden, that's because there isn't one. Biden has been replaced with a picture of an autopen. And here is some of what it says on the plaque, or rather plaques below. Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history, taking office as a result of the most corrupt election ever seen in the United States. Biden oversaw a series of unprecedented disasters that brought our nation to the brink of destruction. And here's some more. Nicknamed both sleepy and crooked, Joe Biden was dominated by his radical left handlers. They and their allies in the fake news media attempted to cover up his severe mental decline and his unprecedented use of the autopen. All of that on the walls of the White House. Now, Trump is also trying to leave his mark on the U.S. arts scene, and he has long had his sights set on the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Congress renamed the center after President Kennedy's assassination in 1963. Since taking office, Trump has made sweeping changes there, replacing its leadership, securing funding for renovations, and altering its program. He previously called its cultural offerings woke and terrible. Now his hand-picked board has voted to change the name to Trump Kennedy Center. Democrats are up in arms, saying only Congress has the power to do that. Here's Trump when asked about the board's decision.
Well, I was honored by it. The board is a very distinguished board, most distinguished people in the country. And I was surprised by it, and I was honored by it. You know, we're saving the building. We saved the building. The building was in such bad shape, both physically, financially, and every other way, and now it's very solid, very strong.
Someone who isn't feeling honored is Maria Shriver, the niece of President Kennedy. In a post on X, she wrote, "It is beyond comprehension that this sitting president has sought to rename this great memorial dedicated to President Kennedy. It is beyond wild that he would think adding his name in front of President Kennedy's name is acceptable. It is not." Joining us now is Jessica Gienow-Hecht, a historian of U.S. foreign relations and political culture. Great to have you back on DW. Now, most presidents leave legacy building to historians. What does it tell us that Trump is actively curating his own memorial landscape while still in office?
Well, Trump is very interested in imposing a new version of history and history writing on the nation as is, very much influenced by his own name. And much of what he does in the cultural and socio-cultural sector is informed by his desire really to stay in office for longer than he has been elected to. So we can understand his effort to rewrite history, first of all, as one in a long series of previous political leaders wanting to rewrite history. This is not the first time that political leaders are trying that, but on an unprecedented scale, and really to the effect to build himself a personal cult that is going to help him probably to be, as he wishes to, re-elected beyond 2028.
The White House says that President Trump is a student of history. What era or what other leader is he taking his inspiration from then?
I ask myself that all the time. Trump in his tenure is very much a man of the 19th century. He reminds me very strongly, or at least in certain respects, of some of the presidents that we have seen in the 19th century, because many of them were not as prepared for the political position that they ended up in eventually. But I'm not sure whether he has been studying this, and I'm not quite sure what his role models really are in the long run, other than that they happen to be, for the most part, members of the Republican Party.
And I want to talk about this portrait gallery that he has set up in the White House and the texts that are on this plaque. People have been saying that he's just trolling, but really, has a sitting president ever savaged his predecessors like this before?
Well, certainly not on a massive scale as much as he has done this now. The idea of paying homage to predecessors is kind of written into the office, at least on a lip service basis, and he does not really respond or respect any of that. But what this really is all about is about legacy. It's about his attempt to write himself into that history, and not just himself and his own personal cult, but his opinion and his views, and establish signposts that are really designed to shape public opinion, at least among his constituents, as much as he can do.
Can you explain how propaganda and personal myth-making works in shaping a leader's historical legacy?
Now, that's an interesting story because a lot of leaders would say they never exert propaganda. But in any personal cult, beyond the decease of a president or beyond the stepping down of a president, there is always a lot of myth involved, depending on the circumstances, really, of his stepping down and his life after what he did when he was a president, which is another way of saying the myth really depends not just on the tenure as president, but also on his life before and after. And so it's often all collapsed into one. I call that the brand making. So what Trump is trying to do here is really to establish a brand America that is almost synthetical or the same as the brand Trump that he wants to present and that he wants people to perceive as such.
Do you think the American people, and they're not his only audience, people around the world believe this rebranding, this image that he is portraying of a new America under a leader like him?
What's really interesting is that none of this MAGA and Walk of Fame is really directed toward foreign publics. It's not even directed toward the entire American people. MAGA is an ideology and a brand really designed for his own constituents. MAGA has no interest in foreign perception, in international reputation. If it did, it wouldn't exist the way it does today.
How does repetition of false claims, and that's something that we've seen abundantly in this administration, how does that affect public memory and collective understanding of history over time?
Yeah, in branding, and any brand expert will tell you that repetition is key. Monotonous, mantra-like repetition of very simple sentences, of very simple messages, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, does something to the audience as is, even if they don't believe in it, because it does become a signpost or a measuring stick for what to say in public, how to self-censor yourself, what to write about, what research topics to figure out in the future, what to say in front of school children, and the like. It is essential.
We'll have to let you go in a couple of seconds, but maybe briefly, if you could write a new plaque for President Trump, what would your appraisal of the first year of his second term in office be?
My goodness, wish you had never been here.
That was historian Jessica Gienow-Hecht. Thank you. That is very clear and a lot briefer than the president's plaques. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.